Hello and welcome today to Extended Disc, another 30-minute webinar. I have here with me my boss, CEO and president of Extended Disc North America. Hi, Marku.
Hi, Christina. How was your Labor Day weekend?
Always great when not working, right?
You don't have to be here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my boss told me I could actually take the day off. So this is a topic I know that, as trainers, as consultants using extended disc, we get asked all this question all the time. It's like, why didn't we ever talk about it before? But I'm glad you brought it up. So tell us kind of, how did you pick this topic this time?
Well, when I think about different topics for the webinars, and of course we all bit some ideas, this was one of those things that like, duh, we get asked this question all the time. Maybe we should talk about what is really the difference between extended disc and disc. And we see kinds of people asking this question. One is the respondents. Hey, I've taken disc already. Why am I taking extended disc? Or facilitators who are familiar with disc, but are really not quite clear about what are the differences. So I hope that this webinar will clarify some of those issues and will be helpful for the facilitators when they get asked this question, and also for maybe people who are thinking about, hey, should I upgrade from disc to extended disc?
Exactly. I think some people didn't even realize there was a difference between extended disc or even all disc tools.
So, most people don't know that.
Yeah. So I guess what would help a lot of people is to kind of just give us a little background about disc.
Well, let's talk about disc in general first. If we move that, help me with moving that slide. Here we go. So disc in general, I think many people know, but very quick review, that it's really based on the Jungian model, and we go all the way back to 1921 when Carl Jung came up with this model. And it is known as the four-quadrant model, and disc is based on this. Myers-Briggs is based on this. Almost all behavioral style assessments are based on this four-quadrant model.
He's the only one that actually says it correctly. Name. I never say it correctly.
Different pronunciations, and he came up with this model. And it's can you believe it, almost 100 years ago, and still used so widely today. And then an American by the name of Marston, about 7 years later, took this Jungian model, and he came up with the disc model in 1928. So that's been around almost 100 years as well. And it's time tested and very well known all around the world.
Impressive guy. I think a lot of us already know this, but he was also the creator of Wonder Woman, which is always impressive for me.
That's right. And I think he also came up with the first lie detector test.
He did.
So Marston came up with the disc model, and people kind of think that somebody owns disc. But the reality is, and this is surprising to many people, that no one owns disc. You have different companies that have created their proprietary assessment tools around the disc model, but the theory itself, it's in public domain. Or we talk about software, it's kind of like an open source code. It's out there that people can use. What they can develop is their proprietary tools.
Okay, great. I mean, I know I get questions as a trainer. It's like, isn't everyone in just one giant disc database?
Not the same. That's why you have companies like, we have extended disc. That's the product that we own. We've developed it and we own it. You have different discs that are called different names. They're based on this model, but the model itself is not owned by anybody.
So you're basically saying disc, the tools, they measure based on disc, the theory.
They're based on this open source public domain theory. So they're based on the same foundation going all the way back to 1921. And speaking of the disc model, people typically like it. Most people have a positive impressions of disc. Not everybody, by the way, but many do. And typically why people really like disc is that it's simple. It's very easy to remember 4 different behavioral styles, D, I, S, and C. And because it's simple to remember, it's easy to understand. And because it's easy to understand, it's also easy to implement. So people can learn it quickly. And as you know, as a trainer, there's all kind of games and exercises you can do. People really have a lot of fun learning about the disc styles. What do we like about the D styles? What do we don't like about the I styles, and so on. So it's something that can be learned very quickly.
I think as a trainer, I always say it's one thing to come and meet with us or go through a workshop and be very excited and have it fun. But if it's not practical, if it's not easily implemented into our already overly stressful lives, it's not a good tool to use. But a DISC isn't like that.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we always should kind of step back and think about why are we actually doing this? Yes, everybody loves to read about the most important person in the world. Getting your own assessment result is fun and exciting. But we need to step back and think about why are we doing this? Why we are doing this is that we really try to help the respondents, the participants, to think about how to make clear decisions about how to modify their behavior and how to modify their behavior so they can become even more successful. And the DISC model being easy to implement, and participants learn it quickly. And what you see often happen in the organizations is that when people begin to use it, it in essence become a kind of shared common language. You hear people say, hey, I was calling on a prospect and it's clear in I-style, high I-style in fact, and so on. So it becomes part of the organizational culture. Now, here again, I do need to remind, and we had a webinar about this recently, how to make it part of the organizational culture. You do need the reinforcement, and I still believe that the most critical role in making that happen is the role of the manager by asking that question. And that simple question is, what is the DISC style of your prospect, your customer, and so on? So when the manager keeps asking that question, it really becomes that common language, and ultimately making sure that people are actually using it in daily work lives and personal lives as well.
Absolutely. I think it works very well there too. So we like DISC.
People like DISC, but let's be fair. Not everybody likes all DISC tools. And the reason that people have some negative feelings and opinions about some DISC tools is that they are simply too simple. They simply lack the horsepower. They're not robust enough to go wide and deep enough with different kinds of applications. And sometimes it almost becomes a training activity almost. Sometimes some of those paper forms you fill out, and you are one of the, I think, 15, 16 different DISC styles, and it's fun. You get some understanding that people are different. I'm not discounting that has value, but it really doesn't go far and deep enough in its applications. And probably the most common thing that I hear, and Christina, I would say almost 100% of our clients use some DISC in the past, maybe 95%. A lot of them use DISC in the past. And Absolutely. What they tell us is that what they really didn't like about some DISC tools is that they are really designed to measure what a person thinks or feels or believes they need to be in their current role. So it's kind of specific to a point in time. And one way to look at this is that when we go to work, our boss has some demands, there are some goals, there are priorities. I most likely work with other people, and that team has a certain kind of culture. I need to fit in their organizational culture. There's a lot of pressures and priorities and demands that are placed on us at work. And it's very natural that we adjust our behavior to fit in. And that when some of the DISC tools are being used, it really is focusing on what the person thinks they need to be in right now. And as a consequence, I hear this all the time, people saying that when they use some DISC tools in their organization, is that people make comments like, I used to be an IS style and I'm a DI style, or whatever the differences in the results were, but sometimes very dramatic differences in what the results were like. And people had, especially facilitators and coaches and managers, the question is, who is this person truly? Who are they really? And what is the starting point for development?
So it sounds like that, there are DISC tools out there, but some measure at different levels is what you're saying, right?
That's exactly it. Each tool, each assessment tool is designed to measure something specific. How you design the questionnaire, how you design everything is designed to measure certain thing. Even that different DISC tools are using the same terminology, same model and theoretical foundations, they are still designed to measure different things. You can kind of think in different layers. Do we want to know the outer layer, how the person thinks they need to be right now? Or do we want to go deeper and deeper and find out what is that hardwired DISC style, that DISC style that remains stable and kind of consistent throughout our adult lifetimes?
Yeah, I think it confuses people because a lot of assessments just say, this is your DISC style, but they don't know that there are different levels in terms of how DISC is measured, or what DISC is measuring, I should say.
That's right. At the very least, we need to understand that the tool we are using, what is it truly measuring?
Exactly.
And I think one of the key takeaways I hope people get from this webinar is that not all DISC tools measure the same thing, and you really want to be clear about what you want to measure.
Exactly.
If you only want to measure what the person thinks they need to be, then it doesn't really matter. You can use almost any DISC tool.
Right.
But if you want to find out who the person truly is, then I think you need to look at some other option. One of our clients said, hey, different tools measure different things. He said, use this as an example, I don't want to know who the person is on the first date. I want to know who the person is that I marry and wake up next to 20 years later. That's what I want to know. But when we're looking at this, measuring who I am right now, I think about it. Let's say I'm truly an S style. That's who I am deep down. And that's the S style that I'm going to be for the rest of my life. It's going to be quite steady with that. However, if I'm working in an organization that is a very D cultural organization, I want to fit in. I may believe that in order for me to get succeed, get a promotion, get a better pay, corner office, I need to be like a D. Mm-hmm. So if the DISC tool that is being used measures who you think you need to be, guess what? I could show up as a D. Well, I would feel good about those results because it's validating that, hey, I'm just like you, and it can provide good face validity. Mm-hmm. However, when people retake it, maybe culture has changed, maybe job has changed, a lot of things could change. My results will change also. So the so-called test-retest validity with many DISC tools is simply not there.
So not all DISC measures hardwired styles, what you're saying.
Right. So if we really want to measure who the person is, some of the DISC tools were just frankly failing. Mm-hmm. And I think valid criticism of those DISC tools were that, hey, the starting point for development is skewed. Like if you, let's say in that example mm-hmm. I just shared, let's say, Christina, you my coach. Remember, I'm truly S style, but my results are showing me as being a D style because I'm responding to the demands of my environment. Well, if you think I'm a D as my coach, you may tell me things like, Markku, you gotta slow down, mm-hmm. listen more, be more patient. But remember, I'm truly an S. In essence, you would be giving advice that is almost exact opposite what I should be hearing. Right. And that's why some people say, how do you really get a good, accurate starting point for any kind of development initiatives?
And that could get you in trouble if you're, you come out as a D, but you're truly an S under pressure. What do we say? We show up as who we truly are, and that could cause problems.
That's right. We revert to a natural style. Mm-hmm. And these kind of situations, I think, and many of our clients have told us that they looked at tools like Myers-Briggs. Excellent tool, well-researched, very, very well and deservedly respected. And it's a great tool, what I call self-discovery. Mm-hmm. And I believe, and I'm kind of repeating myself over the different webinars and when I talk about DISC in general, is that we need to have that confident self-awareness, and anything that can improve our self-awareness, I'm all for that, and MBTI does a great job there. Now, at the same time, I hear a lot of our clients say that one challenge they have with Myers-Briggs is that, it keeps that 4-letter combination, you one of these 16 personality types, that when they go around and ask employees a few weeks after training, well, people can't remember their 4-letter combination. I think I'm an I, and I can't remember the rest. So it's when they don't remember it, often they're obviously not using it. And another aspect is, remember the big picture, we need to learn to modify behavior. In order for me to be successful at modifying my behavior, I need to learn to identify the styles of other people. If I can't remember my 4-letter combination, how likely am I going to be very good at identifying the 4-letter combinations of my customers, co-workers, etc.? It was really not designed for that. It's more designed for that self-discovery piece.
So it's complicated. In fact, I even had a trainer who told me she couldn't have trouble remembering all those letters sometimes.
Well, it's just, again, it's not designed quite mm-hmm. to be in this kind of application. Is understanding better who we are, and it is a little bit complicated. And because it's complicated, and you mentioned we have so many other demands, if it's complicated, we are not likely to use it, so it's not being practiced.
Right, exactly. So, understanding all this so far, let's get back to the meat of it. Is there really a difference between extended DISC and other DISC tools?
Well, I need to make a long story short here because we've been around for 25 years. But one of the reasons for developing extended disk was originally really to try to keep the best of the both worlds when it comes to disk and tools like Myers-Briggs. What disk system really offers is that user friendliness. So we wanted to make sure we keep that with extended disk.
So extended disk and disk are user friendly, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because it's easy to remember, easy to use, so people can learn to identify the styles of other people. But here comes the most significant difference when it comes to disk and extended disk is that with extended disk, we are really focused on measuring that hardwired disk style, who we truly are. In some ways, that is a little bit more challenging for two ways. One is how we actually measure it. But second is that sometimes it's a little bit difficult to take a honest, frank look at yourself in the mirror. But we really want to make sure that when we provide information to the participants, that there is some information where they are going to have to stop and think, hey, is that really true about me? Because if we only provide sort of a face validity stuff, I'm telling you what you want to hear, what are you going to do? You're not going to change because you getting
no value.
Yeah, you're not going to change. So we hope that there will be situations where respondents say, hey, I don't know if that's me. And then we have an opportunity to really create some change. And when we create change, we are very likely to increase the success as well.
Exactly.
So, by the way, this is something it's a mouthful, but I'm calling it's accurate identification with application. So we are really identifying who you really are, and then we are able to put into practice with the user friendliness of the disk model.
Good thing it's not our office on fire. Sorry about the siren. So accurate identification with application.
So let's identify the hardware style and then keep the user friendliness of the model, the disk model, to actually put it in practice.
So you're going to show us again, kind of what the difference between, I'm just going to keep going back to the same title. What's the difference between extended disk and disk? Just keep going on it.
All right, let me kind of show another way to look at this. If you take this scale where we look at different types of behavior with the unconscious, or some people call subconscious behavior, to conscious behavior. In other words, conscious behavior is who we think we need to be. Typically, it's work related. How do I need to show up in my office every day? What are the kind of behaviors that I believe is going to create success? And of course, I'm adjusting the culture of the organization, the teams. I want to provide the kind of behavior I think will make me successful in the eyes of my boss. This will take more energy. It's not who I am. I'm modifying my behavior.
It's kind of who I feel I need to be.
Right. And by the way, those perceptions that I have may not always be accurate. So what I think I need to be may not be what I actually should be.
Exactly.
Unconscious behavior is who I actually am. That is the kind of behavior that is most comfortable. It's most natural to me. It's typically most pleasant to me because it doesn't take energy. But that is who I really am. And you may talk about this just a moment ago. Under pressure, this is where we really revert to because it is most comfortable behavior for us. And disk tools have traditionally focused more on the conscious behavior. And this is the reason people would make comments like, I used to be an IS style and I'm something else. Because the environment will change and therefore the results will change.
So that face validity you were talking about.
Face validity will be typically there high because I'm hearing what I want to hear based on this context, the time in my existing environment. It's telling me those things that I want to hear. But we at Extended Disk focus on that unconscious behavior, who we truly are, the hardwired disk style. Now we do look at how we adjust, with that adjusted profile, perceived need to adjust, some people call it. But our clear focus is who the person really is, this unconscious behavior.
So you're saying Extended Disk focuses on both, but is there emphasis on one more so than the other, and why?
Well, the clear emphasis is on the hardwired style, the unconscious behavior, because we believe that is the true, accurate starting point for development. We really need to know who the person is under all of these layers. And once we're able to identify what that is, then we are able to give specific guidance as how to modify behavior with different individuals in different situations. So the person is making decisions about how to adjust on accurate information.
Good point. Well, I mean, a question I get asked sometimes is, well, why doesn't all DISC tools measure both?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, honestly, I know what we do at Extended Disk, but different tools are simply designed to measure specific things. So I think it's some sort of a philosophy that different organizations have. I told you a little bit about the motivation to create an Extended Disk, but the clear motivation was also to make it very practical in organizational and business settings.
Yeah.
We always need to keep the big picture in mind. Yes, everybody loves to read more about themselves, but the value for the organizations and individuals really come when we are beginning to modify our behavior. So those modifications need to be appropriate, and that's why we need that specific, accurate starting point for those adjustments.
Yeah, and it sounds like it would be much more challenging to measure unconscious behavior over conscious behavior.
Well, it really is, and one of the things about Extended Disk questionnaire, it is a little bit more challenging to complete than most DISC questionnaires. I always say there are good news and bad news. Good news is that it's only going to take 10 minutes. The bad news about the questionnaire is that you're not going to like it a whole lot.
Yeah,
because it's more challenging. It's kind of like going to the dentist. Dentist will tell you ahead of time, hey, you're going to feel some pressure before they do anything. So you prepare for it. And as long as you tell the respondents that it's going to be challenging, everybody's going to be fine with it.
Well, great. Well, that helps a lot, I think. Anything else that we can talk about that help distinguishes Extended Disk?
Well, I'm going to talk about just a couple of things that frequently come up with our clients, and one of is the tailored assessments. And in DISC assessments traditionally, and actually many other assessments, clients were typically forced to select off of a handful of assessment tools. So if you are working with managers, well, here's a manager assessment, here's a salesperson assessment, here's kind of a general DISC assessment. And that's fine, but really if you want to make the information most accessible and relevant, I think you need to be able to tailor the assessment. So with Extended Disk, our clients are able to tailor the assessments to their specific applications. So some of those things are visual, look, logos, colors, etc. But really where the most important tailor aspect comes into is how do we make the content to be the right amount of content and the right type of content. So we can then customize it to, let's say, specific roles. For example, if you talk about customer service roles, well, there are all kinds of customer service roles. But let's say you go into banking, for example. Instead of providing the bank tellers a customer service assessment, if you provide them a bank teller assessment that uses a terminology, uses visuals that all relate to their job roles in banking as tellers, they're going to be much more open to information provided to them even before they start reading it.
Right, they're going to feel the value in it.
Yeah, it's specific to their roles, specific to their industry, and it's specific to the culture. So let's say we are working with our athlete assessments. Well, one, you have team sports, but then you also have specific team sports. Then you have team sports that are specific to different parts of the world. What kind of pictures you should use and some of the terminology that you use all need to be customizable to make sure the information is as user-friendly as possible.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us as trainers, it's great to know that we have this template, but we can make these, minor to major adjustments to it that fit better within our organization or fit better for our clients.
Yeah, this comes up very frequently. And of course, when you look at tailoring the assessments, you can also do it in the pair assessment. So if you're working with coworker and a coworker, that's one type of report. Now, if it's a boss and direct report, now we need to change it a little bit so it's more relevant. And of course, same with the team assessments. So if we are dealing with, let's say, a customer service team, it needs to be different than for a sales team because the behaviors that create success need to be different because different behaviors do create success in those contexts.
Exactly.
But the good thing is that the participants still need to complete that question only one time. Once they're done it once, you can provide the individual reports in a number of different formats, and then you can also create a team and pair assessments with no requirement of anybody spend more time completing a questionnaire.
Right. Anything else about Extended Disk offers that other DISCs may not?
One of the things that comes up almost every day is validation. And validation, you always need to ask, whatever your assessment tool is validated. And that's, of course, important because ultimately the question is, can I trust the results? Many assessments, when you take the questionnaire, if you just blindly select responses, guess what? You can still get an assessment result.
Mm-hmm.
And when you stop and really think about that scenario, you begin to realize that the validity cannot be all that high if the system somehow forces out an assessment, no matter what the responses are. And one of the things with extended this that I think we as an organization take a whole lot of pride is that we have these validity checks in there that would make sure that if the results are not reliable enough, we are not going to produce an assessment results. And it's important because when we know that results are not valid, we call it invalid result. We should not provide information to the respondent because often they make very important decisions based on the information provided.
Mm-hmm.
So if we know that statistically we don't know if the validity is there, we should ask the respondent to complete the questionnaire again. They might have simply been distracted when they were sitting down on their computer to take the 10-minute instrument.
So yeah, it's important to know that an invalid result is not necessarily a bad result.
No, it's not a bad result, but we need to make sure that we provide accurate result, and that's why the validity checks are there.
And I know, as my boss, Markku, always says, it doesn't just end at the assessment. We need to provide above and beyond. So you're going to talk about kind of administration, kind of what is beyond the DISC assessment itself.
Very quickly on these two topics, administration and support, because these come up so frequently with our clients. They want to be able to manage everything online 24/7. And by that, I mean that they can go onto their system and reorder their reassessments. They can tailor their assessments, whether it comes to the individual assessments or the pair or team assessments. They can do all of that on their own. Of course, if they don't want to, they can contact us and we handle that. But one of the things that I really, with on this new platform that we introduced fairly recently, is that you can really begin to use it as online, I call it organizational development analysis tool. And we're not going to get into that topic today because we will have a future webinar on that. Just I think 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, October 5th we'll have one.
And then the audience can really see how that works. But what our clients are telling us that now it's not just an assessment report that we are providing for individuals. It becomes a tool for managing the entire organization. Of course, sometimes at a smaller scale, might be looking at a team only, but it becomes a tool that becomes part of the decision-making process.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful not to have to look at 20 different reports, but have a portal where you can go in and just be able to understand the DISC styles of groups of people or individuals.
Exactly, and to be able to do it at no additional cost, then it becomes, again, a tool for being a more effective manager, more effective CEO. And let's say you have to put a project team together. You can log into the system and do this analysis on your own so you can make sure you put the right team members into the project group.
Exactly.
And lastly is the support. One of the things that probably better than I, because I talk about it all the time, that we need to provide the best support. And there are a couple of types of support. One is what I call technical support. We need some help perhaps in creating a team report. And I think part of our mission is really to make sure that the facilitators are successful. Yes, on the assessment side, we want to make sure that the respondents now get the most user-friendly, most relevant, most accurate assessment results. But part of our role is also to make sure that our facilitators, our clients, are successful. So when they're using the tools, they can be very comfortable and confident doing so. And that often means that you need to have on-time, very responsive support. A lot of times those issues come up 15 minutes before a training session, or maybe you're coaching a client is pulling up in the driveway, and you need to meet with them and you have a question and need to get those questions answered right away. And then we have people like you, Christine, our coaches, who are there to make sure that you help our clients, the facilitators, the coaches. So if they have questions, they need some ideas, they need a refresher, they can just call you and set up a time and you are there to help them.
Or 15 minutes before a workshop.
That works too. And finally, with the online resource center for our clients, when they log onto our website, then they get those free resources, like maybe they would like to use PowerPoints, or maybe they want some exercises to use, handouts. They can download all of those at no cost. And finally, I mentioned the support materials that I believe are the best in the industry. We have two types, one for the respondents or the participants, and of course for the facilitators as well, to make sure that everybody's successful on that side, while make sure that the information really sticks with the participants. They have some reference guides to make sure that ultimately we get back to that big picture. Why are we doing this? Let's modify behaviors to become more successful.
Well, I hope for all of you out there that were able to join us today that you have a much deeper, broader understanding of what the difference between extended disc and disc is. We do have an upcoming webinar Thursday, September 22nd at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, and we're really excited to be introducing our new extended disc training videos that we have worked long and hard on. They're short videos on DIS&C and overview of disc that you as trainers can share with your clients and your employees and participants. So please join us then. We'll have more information then. And just one last time, Marco, is there just kind of one brief statement that you would say about if someone were to ask you, what's the difference between extended disc and disc?
Well, the most significant topic is what we measure. So we measure that hardwired disc style. And the reason we do this is, one, we get the accurate starting point for development.
Yeah.
And then we keep the user friendliness of the disc model, so we make sure that people are actually using this in modifying their behavior. And the last step in modifying the behavior is always the most important. So we get accurate information that is accessible to make sure that people become more successful.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Marco.
Thank you, Christina.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.